Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a weekend edition of A Good 10 Minutes. I'm your host, Alex, and let's get it started. I have quite a lot to cover on this Saturday, March 16th. Let's get right into it. History will be made today in Kansas City when the KC Current play the Portland Thorns in a National Women's Soccer League match. They'll inaugurate the new $120 million CPKC Stadium, which, according to its owners, is the only stadium in the world built solely for a women's pro sports team. Those owners, by the way, include Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes and his wife, former soccer pro Brittany Mahomes. CPKC Stadium seats 11,500 people, but with season tickets sold out for months, it may be a question of when, not if, it gets expanded. Markets slid yesterday yet again for 2 days in a row after this week's inflation data made investors worried about high prices and the interest rate cuts they don't inspire. Tech companies took a hosing. Adobe really highlighted that with a 13.67% drop just yesterday when it released a really weak sales forecast. So the Nasdaq was down almost 1%, S&P 500 down 65 basis points, Dow down 49 basis points, Bitcoin down 4.18%. So really just a down day in the markets yesterday. Moving on to some interesting updates regarding the real estate market, if you will. Realtor fees are about to shrink. This is great news. The National Association of Realtors, NAR, agreed to pay $418 million over the next 4 years to settle several lawsuits alleging it artificially inflated realtor commissions. Included in the deal is a policy change that will likely obliterate agents' 5 to 6% commissions. For decades, selling your house meant agreeing to pay that fee, the highest in the world, compared to most countries, 1 to 3%. If you wanted your home on almost any listing service, you had to pay that fee. The fee was split between your agent and the buyer's agent. The lawsuits argued that the NAR and brokerages kept buyers and sellers out of the commission negotiation process, leading to higher overall housing costs. Under the settlement, the NAR would no longer require the brokers advertising homes for sale compensate the buyer's agent, likely forcing agents to lower fees to stay competitive, a change that's ultimately likely to lower home costs. So a really big congratulations to everyone looking for that American dream of buying a home, which is harder than ever to reach at this point in time. If a federal court approves the deal, the NAR would see a lot of legal drama go away, including a $1.8 billion jury verdict from a case in Missouri and other similar cases that could have pushed it toward bankruptcy, an outcome that the deal should prevent. So be on the lookout for that, and I'll obviously update you when that goes through. Some headline updates. A really interesting tech outage impacts McDonald's across continents. The Golden Arches was not loving it yesterday when an IT problem left some stores around the world unable to open, take app orders, or process credit cards. Issues cropped up at restaurants in the US, Japan, Australia, the UK, and Hong Kong. Though Mickey D's hasn't said what caused the trouble, the chain said it was not related to a cybersecurity event. It's the latest high-profile tech snafu after recent outages for Meta, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Up next, Uber and Lyft to leave Minneapolis over wage law. Minneapolitans may need to get used to hailing taxis because rivals Uber and Lyft have both vowed to put the city in their rearview mirrors after its city council overrode the mayor's veto of a minimum wage law for ride-hauling drivers. They say they'll stop operating there, and when the new law, which requires drivers to be paid the local minimum wage of $15.57 an hour, takes effect on May 1st. It's not the only place gig economy players are fighting against higher wages for drivers. Uber is among the delivery services suing New York City over its new wage requirements for delivery workers. So some pains here for Uber and Lyft, and some anti-business legislations coming in some of these states. Up next, judge said Georgia DA could stay on Trump case if her ex got off it. After some defendants in a criminal case accused former President Donald Trump and others of interfering in Georgia's 2020 presidential election raised ethical concerns, a judge ruled yesterday that District Attorney Fani Willis would continue as the prosecutor as long as she took Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade, with whom she had a romantic relationship, off it. Though Willis was not disqualified as the defendants requested, the judge said the relationship created the, quote, appearance of impropriety. Wade quit the case soon after the ruling came out. Up next, Bernie Sanders back in the news, feeling the burn inside the 32-hour work week that Bernie is trying to pass. The Vermont senator, who loves democratic socialism and mittens, introduced new legislation this week that would make all your weekends 3 days long without reducing your paycheck. The 32-hour work week act, brought forward by Senator Bernie Sanders and Senator LaFonza Butler, would lower the federally recognized standard work week and overtime threshold from 40 down to 32 hours over 4 years. This all while ensuring employers don't cut full-time pay by 8 hours worth of wages. This will require 1.5x overtime when work days are longer than 8 hours and 2x pay when they surpass 12 hours. Sanders presented growing evidence that the 4-day work week can lead to less burnout and more productivity. But don't get your hopes up. This is at least the third attempt in 3 years to enshrine the 4-day work week in federal law, and since the idea still doesn't have bipartisan support, the bill will probably stall out. Republicans have voiced concerns that the proposal could hurt retail and small businesses, and one Louisiana senator even likened it to napalm upon the fire of inflation. Still, JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon, OpenAI's Sam Altman, and other business leaders have predicted in recent months that investments in AI and other emerging technologies will automate so many tasks that people could eventually work 3 days a week or not at all. All right, on to some key performance indicators. While everyone's been watching concerned about TikTok in Washington, there's another popular video sharing spot that's disappearing from certain states, Pornhub. The site pulled out of Texas this week after an appeals court upheld the state's requirement that porn sites verify user ages. Never wants to accept being messed with, Texans sought a solution. Google searches for VPNs quadrupled in the state in the hours following Pornhub's announcement, per CNN. The site has ditched a handful of other states with similar laws, and according to Electronic Frontier Foundation, VPN searches have also spiked elsewhere in response. Some additional updates, quote, his life in recent years has been one of unmatched greed and hubris, of ambition and rationalization, and courting risk, and gambling repeatedly with other people's money. Prosecutors did not mince words yesterday in trying to convince a judge to give former FTX CEO and Bermuda Shorts devotee Sam Bankman-Fried a lengthy sentence. They argued SBF deserves to be behind bars for 40 to 50 years and should be forced to pay 11 plus billion in damages. Lawyers for the erstwhile crypto entrepreneur, who plans to appeal his fraud conviction, have suggested that just 5 or 6 years would suffice. Sentencing is scheduled for March 28th. So that'll be very interesting. Some last quick updates. The FTC is investigating Reddit's policies of licensing data for training AI. The company said yesterday as it gears up for an IPO. Apple's in the news for agreeing to shell out $490 million to settle a class action lawsuit brought by investors who felt duped by CEO Tim Cook's comments about demand in China, which has been falling. President Biden supported Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's call for a new election in Israel. A United flight from San Francisco landed in Medford, Oregon, with an external panel missing from Boeing 737. Yet again, Boeing. It's the latest in a recent spate of airplane mishaps, which we'll dive into more in detail in tomorrow's call. The Supreme Court ruled that public officials can sometimes block people on social media, setting a new standard for when they're acting in their official capacity and when they're just being people online. Separately, the court rejected a bid by LGBTQ students groups at Western Texas A&M University for permission to host a drag show on campus. And last but not least, Russians are voting in an election this weekend that is all but guaranteed to keep Vladimir Putin in power. That's it. Just made it under 10 minutes. Thank you all so much. I'll see you back tomorrow for a good 10 minutes with more news and market updates. Thanks so much. See you soon.